In the dead of night, when the moon is high and ill winds blow, and the banshees cry and the moonlight casts an unearthly glow, arise, my love, with tales of woe.
Good evening. It is 12 midnight, the paranormal hour. Welcome to Ghost to Ghost. I'm your host, Chief Lawson. Ghost to Ghost is a podcast to discuss all paranormal and parapsychology subjects. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats, so tell your friends, tell your family. Come listen to Ghost to Ghost. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is that time. It is the midnight hour. It is time for Ghost to Ghost. Tonight, we're going to talk about what you do if you have a ghost. The name of this episode, I Have a Ghost. Now what? Okay, so we're going to cover a few of these topics of how to and how to attain help. With me tonight is my co-host, Heather Lawson, our case manager and podcast director.
Hello.
And as we go through tonight, hopefully this will provide a little bit of information and maybe even some entertainment for you. So, okay, so ghost spirits and other paranormal entities have been subjects of fascination and fear for centuries. Whether one believes in existence or not, the experience of encountering a ghost can be unsettling and perplexing to those of the untrained mind. So that means we're not affected the same way. Before delving into methods of dealing with ghosts, it is crucial to understand what they are. Ghosts are typically thought to be spirits of deceased individuals who, for various reasons, have not transitioned fully to the afterlife that awaits them. They may linger due to unfinished business, emotional attachments, or traumatic events. And honestly, I would say that's the best textbook description you can really get out of it. Okay, so you think you got a ghost in the house. So what do I do and how do I do it?
Call Ghostbusters.
Yeah, who you gonna call? Spirit. So talk a little bit about psychological and emotional responses. When encountering a ghost, it evokes a range of emotions, okay? For us, it's excitement. For others, it's fear. It can be curiosity, it can be lack, and somebody, depending on the ability to understand or the lack of understanding, depends greatly upon what will happen. Most people are driven to fear. They're scared to death the first time they see one, and it's even worse when it's in your home. It's like someone broke in and you can't control that. So, for some people, fear is the main motivator, generator of the emotions that's going to cause you to want to act or how you act. Others, curiosity. Some curiosity. And so, again, it just depends upon greatly upon the person and how that they normally would react. People that have ghosts in their home, and they know they do, the reaction isn't the same because they've gotten rather used to it. It's kind of like having a dog or a pet. They're there and you don't pay a great deal of mind unless they do something really, large or something really, really disruptive. Some people get anxiety, and because they're afraid that, it scared them the first time, and they're just sitting on edge waiting for it to reappear again. That scared them numerous other times. So, or disrupt their daily life. So, when people, the first thing you got to remember is ghosts were people once too. So, one of the things I think that I'd like to bring out is remember when dealing with these, it's no different than dealing with your teenage kids, your adolescent or your elderly parents, or a neighbor you don't like. Okay? So, these are people, or were people, and you have to approach it in that way. Now, one of the big things that happen is when we get contacted on spirit, people go, I have a demon in my house. Really?
It's always the demon.
It's always a demon. And I always ask him, I go, okay, well, tell me why you think you have a demon in your home. And tell me what's happening that leads you to believe that this demon's there.
It growled.
Yep. Well, and that would almost, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you all the different signs and we'll call them symptoms of a haunt to make a depiction between a demon and a ghost. Because I have a lot of people when they call in, they go, well, this is what's happening. And they roll through it and they go, it's a demon. I go, nope, it's not. And they go, well, why? What do you mean it's not? Well, no, it's not. It's a ghost. It may be a malicious ghost. Could be an evil ghost. And when I say evil, I'm not talking demonic. I'm talking they were a rotten bastard in life and they're a rotten bastard in death. And I mean,
Just because it growled doesn't mean it's a demon.
No. And the problem is, they go, well, what would cause it to be a demon? Well, I'm not going to give you the signs of what it would be a demon because then by next week it'll be a demon,
They're like, oh, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what he did.
Yeah. And we don't do that. That just isn't going to work. So, I'm going to tell you up front, if you call me and you roll through or you email us and you tell us what it's doing, I'm going to be the one to tell you whether it's a demon or whether it's a ghost. And we intentionally don't give out those things because the problem is nowadays, before they become our client, 9 times out of 10, people will jump on the internet and go, I've got a ghost and it's doing this and this and this. How does that work, Google? How do I get rid of them, Google? What does it mean, Google? And, I got people, I never forget, we had an episode back when we had our first shot at YouTube channeling, and a gentleman wrote in and said, hey, I had a ghost that knocked 3 times. That's a demon because it's turned around and it knocked 3 times on my wall. People commented, oh yeah, it's a demon. It's, that's a sign of it's mocking the Holy Trinity, the number 3. We had people go, oh yeah. You ever read the Bell Witch? That's what it did there. That's a demon. Well, the Bell Witch wasn't a demon. It was a witch. Anyway, it was an evil witch, but it was a witch. I mean,
she was a person to begin with.
And people go, well, how do you say people are evil? Hell, I got 3 ex-wives. I can show you examples. I mean, pictures. But, I'm just saying, there are people that are naturally evil. People that
We have living examples.
That's right. I mean, there are people that are bad people in life. Now, the term evil doesn't mean they're demonic or they were satanic worshipers. It just means they were bad people in life. And unfortunately, it became bad people in death. I mean, the Warrens worked a case in England. Same thing. It was a bad individual, didn't want to leave the house. It was his house, and he was staying. And, it was more along the lines of, you're going to do it my way, not the fact that I'm dead should matter, and not your way. That's the big problem. Not everything is a demon. Demons are extraordinarily rare. I mean, they are extraordinary. I can count on one hand without using all 5 fingers in the last 30 years of demonic activity that I might have ran across. It's very rare. Again, there's a lot of malicious and a lot of evil spirits, or we'll call them bad spirits out there. Only, again, I hate to use certain terms because people convert them or twist them around. They
tend to latch onto them.
Yeah, I mean, we've had bad neighbors places we've been, okay? They weren't demonic. They weren't evil. We didn't have to go over and stake them in the heart, before they rose, before, when the moon came up. But they were still evil in the fact of some of their actions. They were just bad people, and you get that. So let's not confuse that with the demonic trade. First, ask yourself, what do you do, with this alleged activity? Well, again, most people jump on the internet. I type it out, and, ghosts can be... They can be playful, they can be happy, they can be bored, they can be confused, they can be angry, scared, mean, or evil. The ghost of a former killer is still not an energy you want in a house, and he's probably not going to be a jolly fellow unless he's killing someone. He's not going to change that much in the afterlife. And, if you read these first few, playful, happy, bored, shit, that's a teenager. And unfortunately, they don't make Xbox or PlayStation for ghosts. So,
If you think about it, death was going to change anybody's attitude, it'd probably be for the worse.
You would think. Yeah, you would think. So
Not for the better.
most certainly. All right, real quick, we're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be right back after these messages. All right, folks, we're back, and we're talking about ghosts and what to do if you have one. So understand, too, these are not pets. You know, the good thing is you don't have to feed them. You don't have to clean the litter box. But they're going to have a little more alarming activity than what...
Traits?
Yeah, traits than what your cat or dog would have. So one of the things...
Well, we hope your dog and cat don't have that.
Yeah, God, we would hope so. One of the things that I always ask people, because the first thing I need to figure out when I get to call, we're going to talk about calling us and bringing in professionals here shortly, but one of the first things you got to ask yourself is, what kind of ghost do I have? And they go, I don't know, I think he's Italian. That's not what I meant. You know, and I don't even want to know why you think he's Italian. Did he bring you a pizza or calzone? I mean, here's the thing, you know.
There's cannolis just suddenly appear.
Yeah. The ghost left, and he left cannolis. Okay, so anyway, no gangster references there. So there's numerous types of spirits. The most common determination is if it's interactive or residual. And for somebody going, oh my God, it scared the shit out of me, what difference does that make? Makes a lot of difference. If it's residual energy, it's stored energy that is locked into the area. It might be the stones the house is built on or the building's built on. It might be the foundation. Usually we're looking at magnetite, limestone, gypsum, certain types of material that will store quartz that will store energy. And if it is, or it could be stored in an object, and it's replaying like a tape that plays over and over again. So, you know, this is not something that we need to worry about as far as being able to communicate with you, but it's going to do the exact same thing over and over again when it hits a trigger. So a certain time of the day, certain weather condition, or combination thereof. So, but the bad news is those are hard to get rid of. You just have to wait for the energy to drain down. Sometimes that could be a very long time. Interactive, on the other hand, it could be a relative or someone that was at the property or attached for some reason, attached something in the property, but they'll interact with you. You can negotiate with them a bit if they're willing.
If they're willing.
If they're willing. It is evil or malicious? Well, that's a very good question because, again, we said earlier, some things are just either evil or they're really malicious. It does not have anything to do with, again, demonic issues. So you may have a ghost that is playful to the point it pranks. Some ghosts find it fun in the afterlife. I always said, you know, when I die, I have a list of names of those I intend to visit, some repeatedly. Warning to the wise. Anyway, you know, this may be their fun and games. They're bored, you know, and you just became their best play toy. Poltergeist. And there's a lot of confusion on this because this term is used interchangeably way too many times. A poltergeist in true form is not really a ghost. It's a reaction due to hormones within an individual within the structure. Usually it's a little girl, sometimes can be boys, but when they go through puberty, the hormones are so strong they interact with, a lot of times, limestone and granite are two things they'll interact with, sometimes quartz. I remember a lady in one case we had this poltergeist that started showing up, and it was only active, and this is how you can tell. The one individual in question was a young man who was going through puberty. When they removed him from the home, everything was fine, nothing happened. As soon as they brought him back in, within an hour or two, activity started up. And she said it really started 2 months before. What happened 2 months before? Did you have anything happen in your life? Well, yes, we just took our tax check and we bought or paid for a brick mason to come in and cover our house, and it's now a stone house. Before it was a one with siding. And I asked her, I said, what kind of stone did you use? Well, we used Indiana limestone all the way around. So basically, you encased the activity. You gave it a giant battery to stay in.
There it is.
Yeah, and I said, so she goes, well, how do we get rid of it? Well, you can either keep the child out of the house until such time that the puberty passes through and he gets through that stage, which could be, 6 months to a year. Or you can strip all that wonderful limestone back off the house because it wasn't a problem until you put it on.
Or you can live with it.
Or you can live with it and tough it through until we come out the other side. And some of these poltergeists can be very, very vicious, but it's not really a true spirit. It's a reaction that creates energy that causes this. And it's believed in a lot of cases that it's a subconscious action by the individual that's causing the activity. The word poltergeist is a German word which means noisy spirit. Poltergeists are full of kinetic energy. They'll move things, throw things. There was one on LaSalle Street in Indiana, and it was in the newspaper in the 70s, and it launched a trimline phone. And I'll tell you, the old trimline phones of my day and Heather's day, they weighed a lot. When you launched one of them, it was like a billy club. It'd go across the room. It had some weight, and it'd do some damage. And the photographer caught the phone mid-flight as it went across. So I'm telling you, these things have a lot of energy and a lot of power because they come from that hormonal change, So
But there was nothing more satisfying than slamming that phone down on somebody with those.
Yeah, it actually made a noise on the other end. It made a real loud sound because you were slamming the phone down. Phones don't do that now. Most you can do is hang up on them. It really isn't very satisfying or rewarding. Shadow figures. And it's overly all thought throughout the field that shadow figures are individuals that don't have enough energy to manifest. So you catch them out of the corner of your eye, they look like a shadow. And it doesn't mean, well, they're black, so, that's dark energy. No, it is not dark energy. Just energy doesn't have enough to do any more than a shadow. So your shadow is not the dark energy of yourself, and neither is a shadow figure. So I have to get one drink in here. For those that like to know what I'm drinking a wonderful 18-year-old that was given to me as a gift by one of our...
Scotch. 18-year-old
Scotch. Yeah, yes, I should point that out. No, I don't have an 18-year-old female here. My wife would kill me. No, it's an 18-year-old Scotch brought to me by Eric Knight, one of our newest members. I want to thank him. I've been enjoying that off and on, little bits at a time. Fantastic. Sometimes it's not a ghost at all. The problem you have is negative energy. A lot of people experience this. In one of our podcasts, we talked about pandemic ghosts. When the pandemic required us all to be, sequestered to the house, and all that energy was built up, and all the sadness everything went through, create a lot of negative energy, and it needed to be removed from the house. A lot of people, as a trait, they will cleanse their home once a year to get rid of the negative energy. And even their cars. It's not a bad idea. Helps remove all that. And, if you want to know how to do that, just send us an email at info@spiritindiana.com. So, again, info@spiritindiana.com. Okay, so, if before you reach out to a professional, and certainly we're a professional, but before you do that, some things you need to ask yourself. And, that's the one thing that I always ask everybody is, what do you want to do with this situation? Before you call me, what's your expectations at the end of our help? Do you want the ghost to go away? And you're trying to get it cleansed in your house. I mean, because bear in mind, we're not driving in a hearse with lights. We're not going to drop a trap and use proto blasters to, put it in the trap and take it out with us. That's not going to happen. Do you want to verify what's there? Do you want assistance in learning to live with what's there? And or do you want instructions on how to live with what's there? There's a lot of different things that you need to think about, because before you call me, you need to know what you want done, So, maybe gather information on the ghost, see who the ghost is. This could be a relative. We've had situations where we've done research, and you got to be careful we don't want to fall into confirmation bias, but we'll do research on a property, And, we see some possibilities that could be what the entity is. We do an investigation. It turns out to be Uncle Roy. Do you really want to get rid of Uncle Roy? I mean, if it's a family member, you might want to negotiate and let them stay there because it's somebody you truly loved in life. And so, it's kind of like saying, well, I loved you when you were here, but now that you're a ghost, yeah, we just want you in the back of the bus or out of here, And that's kind of the way of it. I mean, think of it. It's kind of a racist thing to if it's family member. Now, obviously, you want them to pass over. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But so, like we were saying earlier, this could be a family member. You want to gather some information. Sometimes by doing research on the property, we can find out quite a bit of information that is out there. And it may be a situation where the entity may be attached to something you have in the house. So, we may want to talk about that. We want to know, who they are if possible. And I want to understand. I want to try to manage expectations. We don't always come out with who they are or why they're there. I mean, we're not psychics. We don't use psychics. That's not our methodology. We don't run in with a telephone to the dead and dial a few numbers and get all the information.
That would be nice.
Yes, it would. It would be extremely nice. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. We try to ascertain those facts. And one thing you want to know is, what do they want? Why are they there? I mean, is it the Beetlejuice theory, which is the fact that they're trapped there because in life they lived there? I mean, that should be a pretty easy one to figure out. If you bought the house and the people before it died in the home, there's a pretty good chance that might be who it is. Some people will say, well, when I ask them what they want done, they say, well, I want the ghost to stop knocking on the walls and making all that activity. Okay, that's a reasonable idea. You might be able to establish that with the ghosts and say, hey, look, here's the deal. You can live here and I won't mess with you, but you got to not mess with us either and disrupt our daily life. There may be ways of communicating to help that out and establishing those communications. And then, of course, there's the other end of it, which is cleansing, which is to get them out of the house. Now, I tell you, and we don't do cleansings, but it's very rare we do a cleansing. But I will tell you how to self-cleanse and how to work that. And I always tell people, though, they say, well, I did what you said. I cleansed the house. It's 2 weeks from, 2 weeks ago, and now it's back. Well, unfortunately, ghosts can be a great deal like bed bugs and roaches. You have to treat them more than once to get rid of them. It may take 2 or 3 treatments to get them totally out of the house. And if the spirit has a lot of energy, that may be something that, it may take a lot more to do. So, now, at some point, you have to decide, should I contact a professional? Should I call spirit? Should I call the guys and get them involved? Okay. Well, let's go back to what we just talked about. What do you want out of this? What do you want us to do? Okay. We can sometimes establish who it is, why they're there, what they want. There's a lot of things we can possibly do. It depends. The research on the property alone, hell, I ought to start a business and charge for doing research on property. Our research people, our research manager, Jennifer Verne, and
she's the best.
Oh, God, yes. And our research assistant, Eric Kerr, they do a fantastic
He's
job.
Pretty darn good.
Yep. So I tell you, we get a lot of good info. We've how many times we've had clients go, oh, my God, I didn't know that. So once you've established what you want to do, then you know whether to call us. Now, how to get a hold of us? Well, we have a hotline, 317-883-9103. Again, 317-883-9103. Call now and receive a free set of Ginsu steak knives. No, you don't get any steak knives.
There's the self-cleansing in 6 easy steps.
Yeah, in 6 easy steps, yeah. Yeah, but I'll tell you, it brings me back to the day when everything had an 800 line, call toll-free. Now no one has toll. It's a cell phone, and don't pay attention to 800s anymore. But, yeah, or you can reach us through our website at www.ginsu www.spiritindiana, one word, spiritindiana.com. www.spiritindiana.com. You can email us at info, at spiritindiana.com. Now, what to expect? I'm going to tell you because we get this a lot. And, you know, if you want us, you know, what was the old Jerry Maguire saying? Help me help you.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, show me the money.
Oh, yeah. Well, no. Don't show me the money. Yeah, we don't charge. Yeah. First thing I want to say is, yeah. And that was one of the points I want to say. We don't charge. I don't know how many times I got people that call me and say, how much is this going to cost? And let me tell you what, I've had people tell me, well, the last group I tried to get to help me, they charged me quite a bit. Okay, if someone is charging you for this, you should run. They don't ever hire a group that is charging you. This field does not do that. And I mean, you know, if they're charging you, they're probably not worth the money you just paid. We always tell people, we do not charge. Now, we do accept donations, but we don't solicit them. You know, there's never a case we walk into at the end of the day, go, oh, by the way, you wouldn't be willing to give us a donation, would you? No, we don't stand in a corner like, you know, and ring a bell with a kettle. I mean, you know, it's not that kind of thing. We don't solicit. We do get donations from time to time. Sometimes equipment manufacturers that make this kind of equipment will give us something to try out, and we get to keep it free of charge. Hint, 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 boys at Go Stop and the Go Store. You know.
Or for continuing education.
Yes, continuing education. You know, we do, if we come out to do lectures and that kind of thing, we do charge for that, and it helps us buy more gear, the gear that's not free. And so, you know, this is not a cheap field, but most of it is paid for by ourselves. We put money into this. We've got gear that's worth over $5,000 or $6,000. And we show up at your house, believe it or not, that stuff's not cheap. So, but you can contact us, and when you do, one of the first things I'm going to ask you to do, and it seems to irritate people, but it helps us. First thing I'm going to ask you to do is if you call the hotline and leave me a message is, first of all, leave a return phone number. We don't have a psychic or crystal ball that just told me where you called from. So if you call me, you know, it's like in the fire service. When you call and go, oh, my God, my house is on fire, come quick, click. We can't just drive around looking for smoke and fire. I mean, you know, you have to let us know where you're at. So give us a phone number we can reach you at and a time of day that's easiest to get to you. Now, when I said an 800 hotline, I think a lot of people I'm sorry, not an 800 we were talking about, but a hotline. That doesn't mean there's always a person on it. It means that we monitor it 24/7. So within 24 hours of your phone call, we will have picked, usually within a few hours, we will pick up that number. Now, the number I just gave you, 317-883-9103, goes to our spirit line. Everybody takes a turn operating this, okay? And they're not sitting in a little square room with one light bulb and playing on their phone waiting for the phone to ring. It's not like Ghostbusters. You know, when we do get a call, it doesn't come on a red phone and no one hits a button and yells, we got one. Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. The number rings to like 6 or 7 phones and does it in a relay fashion. So the first phone doesn't pick up, it automatically goes to the second phone. If you hear clicking, it's because it's running it through phones to try to find someone who can answer. If none of us, there's, you know, in a good, perfect world, we have 9 members on the team. We have at least 6 members that it'll ring through, and one of those will generally pick up. If not, then it goes to the voicemail. You should leave a detailed voicemail. I need your phone number that you want me to call back on, and I need your email address. Those are 2 things. I need you to tell me a little bit about what's going on. Now, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do when I call you back is I'm going to ask you to go to our website and fill out the form. If you go to www.spiritindiana.com, go to Request an Investigation tab, and at the bottom you'll see Fill Form Out button, and you hit that form button, and it will take you to a form. Answer the questions on the form. Make sure you give me your address. I am not going to send you Hair Club for Men advertisements. You know, we're not going to spam you. We need the address to research the property. It's really important knowing, you know, what we can find out about the property. And so, you know, and I always tell people, you know, we talk about spiritual attachments, and I always say that I have this little rule. 80% of the time, spirits attach to locations. 15% of the time, they attach to objects. 5% of the time, they attach to people. And those are pretty good percentages. But, Larry the Cable Guy once said that 72.3% of all percentages are made up on the spot. So, yeah, keep that in mind. But anyway, we need to know the address so we can see if there's anything in particular that stands out about the property, okay? I also need to know, do you rent or own? Big one here. We're going to talk about that a little in detail. But I need to know whether you own the property you're in or whether you rent the property, okay? I want you to understand that this is all information we need to start working on your case. We don't just immediately come down a fire pole, jump into a hearse, we load all the equipment out the door. That's not how this works. Okay, your case may not be a case we will be able to help you with by investigating. Sometimes it can, sometimes it can't. Depends. We're going to talk about that. First, let's cover the rent to own. Okay. The thing is if you rent your property, then we have to have your landlord or the owner of the property agree, or the property manager has to agree to sign the same contract you do to allow us to conduct an investigation if we're going to be on property, on site. If they don't, we can't do that. How many times I get people call me from an apartment building, and I'll go, okay, do you think your apartment manager will let us come and investigate? No. Then I can't help you. I can give you all kinds of suggestions. I can tell you about your case. We'll gladly research it for you. But at the end of the day, I can't come there because if the manager doesn't give me permission, I can't do that. Now, I've had people say, well, I talked to him. He said it's okay. No, that's not how that works. They have to call me, and I have to be able to verify who they are, that they are the property manager, they are the manager. So if you're going to get your brother Louie to call me, don't do that, because I'm going to research it and find out who's in charge of the complex, because I'll call them and find that out. Once I get that individual on the phone, I will email them a copy of the contract, let them sign it, and email it back to me, and then we'll go from there. We'll talk about the contract in a minute. So I really do need to know if you rent or own. Now, if you own the property, you have a right to determine who's going to be on it and who's not. A legal right. So many years ago, many years ago, out in Cumberland, Indiana, we got a case came in one time. And this is probably 10, 15 years ago. And it was a young couple who had believed the gentleman had just come out of service, just finished service with the Marine Corps. They moved into this small complex, probably had maybe 15, 20 units. And they were upstairs on one end, and they said, hey, we got this problem. We got this entity, it's active, and we can't sleep nights. It's kept us up. It's done everything in the world. Now, there's no kids, just these two. So we agreed to come out. It was cold winter night, and there's no place really to set up command central. So we set up in the back of one of our Suburbans. We ran cables up the backside. We backed up to their patio entrance and ran cables up overhead into the patio entrance for our static cams. And we told them, we said, here's the deal. Okay, we'll come in, we'll investigate, and then we're going to have a little time to review the evidence, and we'll get back to you. We finished our investigation. We get home. It's about 5 a.m. when most of us get in bed. By 8:30, I got this woman ringing my phone off the wall, ringing the spirit phone off, and it's the property manager. And she's mad as a hornet. She goes, well, what gave you the right? What did you think you had the right to be on our property? I said, because your renters signed paperwork stating that they gave us permission. Well, they don't have the authority. I said, are they renting the location? Well, yes. Then it's their property temporarily, and they have a right to determine who's on it. Just same as they have a right to who wants to come visit. So they signed paperwork agreeing it was okay for us to go in. I said, your problem's with the people. And I said, besides, what difference does it make? Well, it turns out this young couple that was so sweet and innocent ran around, told everybody what was going on, told them all the entire complex was haunted, which is not what we said. And we were very clear about that when we left. We wouldn't have evidence or anything gone through for a while. I think we actually told them 2 weeks. And they turned around and told everybody that, and then they demanded that they let them out of the lease because their apartment was haunted. So here's the end of the story. What the problem was is this folks had used us to try to get out of their lease by saying that it was haunted. And it caused a lot of problems. So we met with our attorney, and he said, hey, they need to sign, we're putting a new contract together. And number two, the only way you go on someone else's property that's leased is if the leasee, the property manager one, says it's okay. And they sign a contract as well. So that is our policy. So if you're living in a rental and the landlord's not going to allow it, all I can do is give you advice. Don't call me and try to ask me to come out and it's okay. No, it's not going to work. We won't do it. We won't take that chance. We're not going to break the law. So that's so you understand the rent-to-own question. So if I don't know how many times I ask someone to fill out the form. When I ask you to fill out the form, fill out all the form, not just the questions you want to fill out. That's no different than talking to me on the phone, and it doesn't help me any more than that. Once that form gets filled out and sent back to us, it gets distributed to research, and it goes to me and my chief of staff so we can look it over and try to figure out what we're dealing with. Again, our research people are fantastic. They start this out, and they start looking at it while we're looking at the situation. I then call in, or my case manager, Heather, here will call you. Sometimes our chief of staff, and we'll do our first phone interview. And we may ask you for clarification and ask you to expand a bit on some of the things that you answered. And also, you may receive one or more calls from the research department as they're researching stuff to verify stuff. So you're going to be in contact with several members of my team, if not myself as well, throughout this entire step. And there is going to take a little getting that done, a few days at least to a week, depending on what the situation is. Then we have to talk about, once we get all this information gathered, several things you need to understand, okay? If we come out, and this is where we start talking about, will an investigation help you? Okay, one, like we said, if you don't own the property and the property manager or the owner will not give permission, then we can't come out. You can't get an investigation. Now, I've had people say, well, I'll get another team to do it. Go ahead, but I'll tell you what, that team could very easily get you evicted over it, because the other couple that we went out to help after this all blew up, they ended up getting evicted because they were trying to prove that their house was haunted. Now, I'll tell you, there is a case, if you try to take this to court, you will fail. There was a case in California where a couple tried to reverse a sale on a house and get out of the lease that they had. They bought the property on a timeshare, or the rent to own. And what happened was they found it was haunted. And they tried to go back and say that the contract was null and void because they didn't disclose didn't disclose it had a ghost. Well, at the end of the day, basically, the court denied them and said that they didn't have to disclose that. Also, if you're buying property in Indiana, the real estate laws are very, very clear, and I don't have that in front of me, and I'm sorry. I usually do. I give this in lectures.
It's easily
you can look it up. Yeah. The only thing that they have to disclose in Indiana is if the location's been used as a meth lab, if it was used in a police action shooting and someone was killed by a police officer, that has to be disclosed. If someone dies at your house, it doesn't have to be disclosed. They don't have to tell you that. They don't have to tell you if they sold marijuana or they sold any other drug out there. Only if they create a meth lab, because that's things that can go. They have to tell you if there was hazardous waste ever on the property or was ever cited for having hazardous waste. But they don't have to tell you if there's a ghost there. I've got this neat graphic.
Personally, I probably would want to know.
Well, yeah, it might be a good selling point. I mean, a lot of businesses, they'll use that. I had this once got a Century 21 sign, and one of the top signs says "Not Haunted," and there you go. I mean, so that's all they have to tell you. We kind of
looked for haunted houses when we were looking.
Oh, there for a while, we tried very hard, and it's not something they put out there when it comes to private residences. So anyway. Once we've established, whether they'll let us in or not, we're going to turn around and say, okay, what can we do to help? We looked at the research, we looked at everything else, and if we come in and do an investigation, this is how this is going to work. We will arrive at 8 o'clock in the evening and leave at 4 the next morning. You, your family, your pets, that includes birds, fish can stay, although we may have to turn off their aeration system while we're investigating for a few hours. But every other pet has to, pet rocks can stay, obviously, but everything else has to go out of the house for that period of time. And you have to come back at 4 a.m. and reclaim and take possession of your house. Now, That's a big one. You have to understand, and you can't just sit in the drive or have a party in the front yard and invite all the neighbors over. That creates contamination, and it's going to wreak havoc with our audio collection of data. You have to understand our methodology. We use a debunking methodology. So in other words, when you give us 15 items that are your claims that have happened on the property, we're going to go in and try to investigate those claims, try to reproduce them. We do use a scientific method. Remember, we're a parapsychology team, not a paranormal team per se. We're going to try to repeat those to get those things to come back. Sometimes we find out these are a result of bad plumbing, bad electrical. A lot of things can cause hauntings that aren't haunting.
Electrical causes a lot.
Yeah, it can cause that. There's a lot of things that cause hauntings that are not ghosts. So we're going to go in and look at that. We don't use psychics. So I can't go in and say, yeah, well, the guy is 6'4", he's dark-haired, his name is Roger, and, no, it doesn't work that way. And we don't use psychics, and you can tell me all you want about the psychic you had to come in. We are not going to use any of that data because it's not part of the scientific method. We only use equipment we can calibrate. If we can't calibrate it, we don't use it. The only exception to that rule is we do something that MIT, that's the University MIT, developed, and it's called the Estes method. They developed it in their parapsychology lab, and we do that experiment. And it's a double-blind study, and you can't really calibrate it, but it doesn't need calibration, being it's a double-blind study. So that's the only thing we don't. And when we get ready to arrive to do an investigation, you're going to sign a release that releases us from any kind of problems or responsibilities. Now, are we insured? Yes. Are we registered with the state attorney general? Yes, we are registered as a business entity. We actually the only paranormal or parapsychology team that is on Kelly's list. Even though it's bought out by Home Advisor, we're still on it. But we are the only one that's ever been on it.
Angie's list.
Yeah, Angie's. What did I say?
Helly.
Okay, Angie's list, yeah. So anyway, you're going to sign that release, and then you're going to leave. Okay, and you'll have to trust in the fact we're good moral people. We're not going to bother anything or damage anything. At the end of the investigation, you have to come back. We're going to ask you to look around your property, make sure everything's okay, and sign a release. Once you sign the release says, hey, I've looked at my property. There's nothing damaged. Everything is the way it is. I'm returning it. Spirit is returning it to me in the same shape in which they got it. End of story. And that's it. So at that point, you're going to be losing sleep as much as we are. Okay. Again, I said there's no cost to this. Okay. We'll clear our equipment and we'll be out. Now, it may take us up to a week to 2 weeks to go through the evidence. If there's children involved and there's a certain amount of fear, we will try to move faster than that. And a lot of times get you data back as quick as we can. The review of data phase is what we call this, and we all go through them. Every camera we use has 4 to 5 hours worth of data on it. If we have 5 cameras out and they're out for 5 hours, right there you got 25 hours of data that has to be looked at by 2 people. So essentially that's 50 hours. The audio, same way. 4 recorders, 5 hours, that's 20 hours, time 2, that's 40 hours. So right there, you're looking at 90 hours in total so far, and that doesn't count all the other stuff. SD sessions have to be gone through because they're taped. SLS camera work has to be gone through, so it takes a lot to do. That's the long part of a parapsychology investigation. So once we have all this, and by the way, we will send you by email a copy of the forms you're filling out. We will send you back the signed copies with all the signatures on them. And actually, that comes back in the review of evidence, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. So, and once we get that done, we will set up a date and say, okay, we're coming in, and we'll show you all this. We will come in, we'll have a USB drive in our hand that will be yours to keep. It has any of the individual things and data that we found and collected, and it might be clips of audio, clips of video, it'll be all the forms, everything's on there, and we will have a hard copy of the forms you sign. Even though there's a digital version on there, you'll still get the hard copy. That'll be left with you for you to do what you wish with. And at that point, we make some recommendations. We are currently working with a clergy member who is joining our team as a subject matter expert, and she will be doing cleansings and different things. And she is working in continuing education right now to come up to speed on that. So at this moment in time, we may be able to recommend one of our people to come in and do cleansings. We will, and I always have people go, is there a guarantee? Yes, there is. A money-back guarantee. If you're unsatisfied, we'll refund your money with no problem.
100%.
100%. And so I always tell people, they say, well, okay, you guys came in, but I really don't agree with this. I think there's more there in what you found. I want a second opinion. Okay, you probably need an interior decorator. Oh, you mean on the paranormal. Okay. Well, that's up to you. I mean, you can contact other groups. I'm going to tell you, Spirit is the oldest and probably the most professional group out there. Now, I'll say there's some other groups that aren't as old, but they're equally professional, but they have different methodologies. When someone walks in with a Ouija board and dowsing rods, I begin to get worried. Not every team out there, matter of fact, I don't know of any other team that's a parapsychology team. They are paranormal teams, which operate by a mixed set of rules. As I said earlier, our methodology is a debunking methodology. There's other types of methodologies. They're anecdotal. There is fact-finding, or what they call immersion. There's all kinds, and I mean these. And I don't have a list in front of me, so I'm just going off memory. Experts do it's a type called. God, I can't remember what it is now. I'm sorry. I can't remember the name of the methodology, but it immerses themselves in the methodology. And the idea is the longer they're in it, the more knowledgeable they become. If we did it like engineering, we would try to create experiments and repeat them numerous times to try to produce a different outcome. Having said that, everybody has different methodologies. We were good friends with Paranormal 911 before they retired. Matter of fact, we have one of their members on our staff, and they use dowsing rods, and they use some things in a psychic, and we didn't do that. It's not. We know some other teams, they use spirit boxes, and we don't do that, not for that kind of purpose. Everybody has different methodologies. I don't think it's a bad thing to try another team. But, and one of my guys, he's always been good about saying this, once you've had the best, you'll never get any better than that. Okay, well, I'm not going to say that isn't our case. Once you've seen us operate, everyone may not operate quite the way we did. I would worry about people that don't have insurance, just like I would a contractor. If you had a contractor to put carpet in or finish a room or redo a bathroom, I'd tell you I'd make sure he's licensed and insured, mostly insured. Licenses, I always tell people, a contractor can go down in Indianapolis, sit 4 hours in a class, and become a licensed contractor. Doesn't mean he's a professional contractor. It means he's licensed or a good contractor. Same thing with there's no licensing for parapsychology or paranormal investigators, but you should make sure they're insured. One time we investigated the LaPorte Museum, and that'll be a subject to one of our broadcasts, and that's the one time that the museum had far more stuff than, because we only had about $2 million in liability, and the museum was way past that. So we were all a little nervous. Like they said, well, as long as you don't break more than one thing in the museum, we're probably okay. And, obviously we didn't break anything, but I mean, we've never ever used the insurance, and we've been around for soon to be 30 years. So, I mean, we've been around a long time. We're very careful. We're very professional. You won't see horseplay out of my people. You won't see that kind of situation. But I think you'll see a big difference depending on the group you pick. But you're welcome to second opinions. I mean, that's your right. I mean, we can't interfere with that. That's totally up to you. Now, if we can't do an investigation, okay, for whatever reason, you rent, the landlord says no, whatever, first things we will tell you how to deal with a ghost that we can't come in and do any kind of research on. First, we'll do your research for free, and we will give you whatever research we find out about the property, and we'll make suggestions. One thing is, take some practical steps with dealing with a ghost. So here's dealing with a ghost in 6 easy steps. Remain calm at all times. No matter what it's floating around the room, remain calm. It is essential to stay calm and composed. Fear and panic can exacerbate the situation. if you don't believe me, watch Ghostbusters 2 in the courtroom scene. Yeah. Set boundaries. Communicate clearly with the spirit. Politely but firmly ask it to respect your space and your boundaries. And in all joking aside, if you just walk out and talk to the room and say, okay, hey, whatever's here, you're welcome to stay. But this is my place too. You're dead and gone now. And I know it was your place at one time, but it's mine now. And I'll let you stay. But here's the rules. You have to be respectful. So here's what I expect out of you. And if you do that, there's a pretty good chance it might cooperate. Again, if they were very easy to cooperate in life, they're probably going to be easy to cooperate in death and vice versa.
Most of them will. It's usually the mean or the bad ghosts that will be uncooperative.
Yes. And for the record, demons don't cooperate very well. But again, you don't have a demon. Anyway, seek understanding. Try to understand why the ghost is there and why he's making the appearances. Now, children, ghosts of kids, they tend to be pranky. I mean, they'll come up and move things, and they'll mess with your hair, or, they'll do things kids did when they were kids. And that's not going to be anything different in life as there is in death. Document your experiences. Keep a journal. Write it down. Document it 100%. When it happened, how long it happened for, and keep this together, because at some future point, that may help. We work with a lot of people. We take in, on average, per year, up to 100 cases. We may only investigate 20 of those cases. Some of these we help people work with the phones, and once we give you this and you try it, if it doesn't work, you may call us back and we'll work with you a little more and try to figure out better ideas. Again, consult a professional. Once you call us, we'll start trying to help you work with it. Now, again, we talked about those, and I always tell people when we get ready to leave after we're done, whether it's an investigation or whether we're going to close the case, we give you all the advice that we normally do. We always say, hey, if anything changes or the activity gets more creative down the road or comes back, give us a call. Now, people always ask me, if you guys come in to an investigation, will the activity get worse? There's a good possibility. We find that paranormal investigations sometimes can increase or decrease activity. They may not do a thing when we're there. It's like kids and guests. The guests are there. Kids have wonderful manners. As soon as the guests leave, the kids do everything short of tearing the wallpaper off. It could be a situation like that. Then again, it sometimes causes the activity to die out totally. We can't guarantee what's going to happen there. It's a risk of investigating, and we want people to know that. So, you need to know that ahead of time. Now, what happens if you do an investigation? I fill all these forms out, and you got all my address and my name. What happens to that data? Okay, it's no different than a lawyer or doctor. We have a client confidentiality, so we don't release that. Now, if you're a business and you say, okay, I don't mind it being released, say Fowler Theater, they're trying to raise money and they don't mind the fact they actually allow ghost investigators in for a fee. So, as long as they are okay with it, we put our account on Ghost to Ghost. We talk about it, and, that's out there, so they don't mind. If it's your personal home and you don't, people, again, it goes back to the old bed bugs, roaches thing. People don't want people to know about it, so they would prefer us not mention it. And, okay, so it doesn't get mentioned. Again, you decide how much, if any, of the information is released. And so once the files are completely done, they are put to an archive. They're only available while the investigation is active to the entire team. Once they go to archive, myself, the chief of staff, and the case managers, only anybody has access to those files. So, and they're archived. Now, somebody asked me, do you still have the files from 30 years ago? Yeah, we do. We actually still have those. So they're still kept in archive. And so, we can go back and look. If someone calls us and says, hey, about 6 years ago, you did an investigation, I can't remember what it is, I always leave the case number with the individual because we assign a case number. And so once I find out what the case number is, I can go back and look it up, or if they know when the year was, I can go back 6 years to that year and look in the archives till I locate it. So, or my case manager can. So, that's a little bit of how we operate. Now, people always ask me, wow, I bet you get some interesting calls. Oh, you can't fathom. the interesting calls. I always talk about that because we get a few people. And the other thing we have to deal with on the 800 line or the emails is this person actually have a medical or psychological problem that they need help with? If they do, not everybody has a ghost. And some people, you have to work with them. And we've had to go, look, you've told us that you've had psychological counseling. We know that you've had psychiatric care. You've been under medication. The only way that we can come in and do any investigating or work this case any further is if you get your psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist to write us or talk to us on the phone and say, okay, I know for a fact there's nothing medical happening here. And once we know that, then we can start looking at the parapsychology end of it. And we may tell you that. And as angry as you get, that may be our condition. We won't move forward till they contact us. Also, we get some interesting people. I remember one time we had a lady who called in the hotline one night about 1 a.m. And I happened to be on duty on the line, picked it up, and the lady tells me about this UFO. It dropped off the ghosts, and that she has ghosts. And I said, well, now it's 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock. I want to go to bed. I'm tired. I said, well, hey, let me do this. Let's start you out. Since the UFO brought them in, the aliens brought them in, we should get you started with Indiana MUFON because it started there. They should probably need to look at it on the alien aspect before we do the ghost. She says, well, that's who gave me your number. I thought, those bastards. Anyway, we do get that. We had one time, I know me and my wife were leaving for someplace, and I grabbed a line on a call, and the guy says, well, I want to hunt Bigfoot. And I said, well, I'm sorry, we don't do any cryptozoology, but, if you talk to Mike from Bigfoot BFRO in Bloomington, I said, that's the kind of the chapter around here, and that's the guy I knew at the time. I said, he can help you out there. He said, I just need to know where to buy the tags. And I'm thinking, tags? What tags?
He wanted to actually hunt.
Yeah, he wanted a tag or a stamp for a hunting license to hunt them. I gave him DNR's number. I'm sure there's some people over there that don't like us either. Anyway, but yeah, I sent him on over there. We do get some odd calls, but that's just part of the nature of the business. We're not closed-minded. If you call us, we're not going to go, oh, they're nuts. And, we're going to listen to what you've got to say. And if there's something we can do to help you, we gladly will. Again, we will do all that we can.
Make sure you are okay too.
Yeah, we got to make sure, because part of our responsibility is I had a fellow vet that called and his medication was mixed up, and we found that out over a period of time of talking to him. And I worked with him and worked with his daughter to get him back down to VA to get things straightened out, and that he did, and it worked out fine. We don't want someone. One of the worst stories I remember, had a young lady call me, and her daughter was talking to a ghost, and her daughter was young, I would say about 6 or 8, and they'd had some trouble with her, and the ghost had been suggesting some things, and she was very concerned. And we got a hold of her, and I said, okay, and we were trying to work this out because there was some issues there with the psychiatrist, and I said, I need to talk to them before we come out because, the daughter had made some comments about hurting herself, and again, this is a situation where we need that handled first. It needs to be a safe environment for us to go into. And the next day she called me and said, well, we don't have to worry about the investigation. Well, apparently she tried to kill her mother and father that night, and they put her inpatient into a mental facility to treat her. And I said, well, I'm so sorry. If and when she comes out, if you still need our help, you can reach out to us. But that happens, and unfortunately, that's the bad part of life. We've had numerous times where these kind of things, when they happen, we have to negotiate and mitigate that emergency. So, we are going to ask you hard questions you may not want to answer, some of which may insult you slightly, but, we need to know that, and we need to keep ourselves safe. I remember we were at a Paracon one year. I was talking... I don't remember we were in a class or we were just having drinks at a bar, but we were talking with Amy from Kindred Spirits, and she told about a case her and Adam had one time. He was in Chicago, and they got there and they were putting equipment out on the sidewalk, and they walked in, and there's open drugs on the table, and there's, and she politely, the individual was violent, and he had her kind of cornered, and she gradually talked her way out of the house and then said, hey, I'm sorry, we're not doing any investigation, and grabbed all the stuff, threw it back in the vehicle, and got out of there. We have to have a safe environment. That's why we're going to tell you. You can't keep a dog in especially a dog that's aggressive in the garage. No, that's not going to work for us. All pets are going to have to be off if we come in. We have to have if you participate in illegal activity, that's got to go away. We cannot be involved in that, and I'm not going to jeopardize the safety of my team for any of that. So we're going to tell you right up front. I've had wives call me, go, look, my husband thinks this is all bullshit, but I need you to come out. Nope, sorry. You both have to agree. If you both live there, you both have to agree that it's okay for us to come out and you're willing to let us do an investigation. We're not coming out if one of the two of you has decided that, no, we're not doing this because it's bullshit. Because that individual may get mad at any point in time and then we become trespassers, and we're not going to do that. We are very careful about what we do. Although, on the flip side, we want to help you. If you have a problem and you have what you believe is a ghost, by God, reach out to us. Call us at 317-883-9103 or go online to our website, www.spiritindiana.com. Go to Request an Investigation, fill out a form. Again, remember, I need your address, your phone number, I need your full name, and I need a number, a number I can reach you at. Now, what happens a lot of times, I have people that they get upset, or maybe even they're drinking when this happens, and they decide to get on the phone and request assistance from us. But then every time we call them, they can't be reached. I have to have a way to reach you. Okay? So if you don't have a way of being reached, you'll have to find one through a friend or something else before we can help you. Other circumstances we've had happen. We had a lady, my wife referred to her as my girlfriend. She was an older lady, really sweet lady, at a nursing home. And she really felt there was some ghosts attached to the nursing home, and I'm not so sure there wouldn't be. I mean, it would make sense. And she wanted us to come in and investigate. Well, the problem is this is a nursing facility that it wasn't like a standalone, independent living situation. It's like an apartment. There's people everywhere. And she had 4 or 5 residents on the phone with me at any given time. They all want us to come in. I said, well, you'll have to have your director give permission. And I even told the director, I said, look, I know you understand. You don't think there's anything here. We can come in and at least, maybe just in her room, do a few EVPs, just a couple of us, not very many. We'd be even willing probably to come in non-marked gear so we don't stir any problems for you, to try to help this lady out so she can sleep and relax. And, of course, we were told no. And this woman kept calling me and calling me and calling me and calling me.
No, in certain terms, we were told no.
Yeah, very much. In no certain terms said, nope, you're not going to do it. We've done stuff for other people where they'll call in and say, I think this is a situation. As long as it meets all of our criteria, we come out and try, even though we may not think and we may not have found a lot, we do what we can to try to help the client out. We make any suggestions or recommendations we possibly can. So we are there to help you. I don't want anybody walking away from this podcast and episode and saying, oh my God, these guys are assholes. They really want it. No, we just have to protect ourselves, and we want to protect you. So,
well, when we protect ourselves, in turn, it's protecting you.
Yeah. So, like Jerry Maguire, help me, help you. So, and again, I mean, if I have to call up and you've left me a number, but you didn't tell me if it's a rental or not, you didn't tell me your address, and I still have to take extra time, that makes it longer in the period of time that we get a chance to try to help you. So with that, the takeaway tonight is be thorough and don't be afraid to call if you feel like there's, something we can do to help you. So, Heather, anything you want to put in on this?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, I think that, we've covered quite a bit. So, and if you have questions, fire them out to us. Come to, we want to thank you for listening, but, get some friends together. Say, you gotta hear this podcast. It's great. Ghost to Ghost. If you got a question, leave it on Facebook. Email us at info@spiritindiana.com. Let us know something. We'll try to help you any way we can. So, well, with that is the end of tonight's broadcast. It is now time for Ghost to Ghost.
Ghost story of the day.
Oh, correction. Ghost story of the day. And I'm doing it, so here we go. Causing effects. Sometimes the effect of a cause is obvious, but the cause is not apparent. In these cases, someone identifies an unrelenting string of bad luck that seems to occur with no traceable reason. To the superstitious mind, a sinister succession of events must have been propelled by a curse, although there may be no record of having been uttered. Sometimes a curse story is retrofitted to suit a unfortunate chain of circumstances. Sometimes the curse for the ill luck remains a mystery. Perhaps the Hope Diamond fits this category. Crystals and gemstones are believed to be able to retain supernatural energy almost like batteries. Louis XVI purchased the Hope Diamond in 1668. Since then, all of its owners have experienced sickness, ill luck, or untimely death. A comparable example exists in 20th century Greenwich, Connecticut, at Dunlan Hall, a 28-room mansion constructed in 1918 on 26 acres near Long Island Sound. Jacobin Behemoth was built by Daniel Gray Reed as a wedding present for his daughter Rhea and her husband Henry Roping. Presumably, the palace wasn't born bad, but somewhere along the line, something happened. Over the years, it picked up a reputation of being bad financial luck to anyone who occupied it, since the Roping sold it in 1950 to steel magnate Loring Washburn. Almost immediately, he was beset with money problems. Things got so bad that in the early 1960s, the finance company took the house away. The huge mansion remained vacant for years, and locals calling it a haunted house. The ex-wife of an heir to the Dodge automobile fortune finally bought Dunlan, a former showgirl. She married Daniel Morin, a New York City cop who later shot himself. She sold it in 1968 to Jack Dick, a financier who paid $1 million for the place. 3 years later, he was indicted for stealing $840,000. Before the case even went to trial in 1974, Jack died of a heart attack as he was being chauffeured home. Lydia, his widow, promptly put the house up for sale. It was she who first gave to voice what many others suspected: the place was cursed, like the Hope Diamond. It brought back bad luck to anyone who owned it. Nonetheless, Indian Alaman Ravi Tikko readily laid down $3 million to buy the cursed property. He was quickly seized with unexpected financial problems associated with mid-1970s oil embargo. Soon he was forced to sell. At this point, Harry and Leona Hemsley acquired Dunlan Hall. Shortly after, the feds caught up with them in 1988. The Hemsleys were arrested for income tax evasion. In 1990, Lena, the so-called Queen of Mean, was convicted and sentenced to prison. I can't help but wonder if the Roping family somehow saw what was coming and unloaded the place just in time. Thanks for listening to Ghost to Ghost. Again, I'm your host, Chief Lawson. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats on the 15th and 30th of the month at midnight. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, maybe have a question or subject you'd like to ask about on air or be used on the show, please email us at ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com, ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com. I want to thank my production staff on Spirit, Jennifer Verne, our research manager and our producer, and Heather Lawson, our trainer on Spirit and our podcast director, for helping make these podcasts possible. My chief of staff, Andrew Brooks, for his guidance and help on the scripts, and everyone else involved. Thank you so much. See you next time. Until then, stay safe and remember the truth is out there. Good night. Ghost to Ghost podcast and its contents is the property of Spirit Paranormal Ltd. All rights reserved. We welcome you to download and play the podcast and share with others for personal use. You may not, except with written permission, use or distribute its contents for commercial use. Spirit Indiana Paranormal, covering the Hoosier State since 2002, Indy's oldest parapsychology investigation group. If you're experiencing what you believe to be paranormal issues, reach out to us for help at www.spiritindiana.com or call our hotline at 317-883-9103. Again, that is www.spiritindiana.com or our hotline at 317-883-9103. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself and the ones you love, and be safe out there.